anybody believes that, I feel bad for you. Hello, welcome to Geisinger Unfiltered, where the world is healing. That's right. We're going to heal the world one episode, one meme, one sarcastic comment at a time, fighting wokeness with common sense. And let's get started. So thank you for giving us your time. Hit like and subscribe to this if that's available on the platform you are listening to. Not only are we going to be covering the conspiracy theory Tartaria and the Mudfloods, probably a lot of you have heard about that conspiracy theory, but at the end of this episode, I am going to reveal what I feel like is the potential most controversial, biggest conspiracy theory that you can possibly consider. That's right. But I want you to hang with me the whole thing. I don't know. Are you going to skip to the end? I hope not. This isn't going to be a long episode. So hang with me, and we are going to reveal what I think is the largest conspiracy theory that is possible at the end of this, and how it ties with Tartaria and the Mudfloods. But if you're not familiar with any of this, and you are right now asking yourself, what is this word Tartaria and Mudfloods? What does this mean? I know nothing about it. Okay, let's dive in. Tartaria and the Mudfloods suggests that worldwide there was an advanced civilization all over the world called Tartaria. And I'll show you a map to that in a second, what the old ancient maps were showing. And that's where much of our very advanced, sophisticated architecture, stuff that there's no way we could have built with horse and cart before power tools, exists all over the world. They tore down a lot of it, but there's buildings in every country all over the world that if you go back to when they say these were built, they couldn't have done it. So this is the Chicago World's Fair in, I'm not sure what year this was. Hey, Glitch, might as well introduce you. You are our AI sidekick for Geisinger Unfiltered. He is in the guest chair here today looking at me again with those wild eyes. Glitchy McBoltface, are you there? Can you tell us when the Chicago's World's Fair was supposedly, when was that picture taken?
Oh, absolutely. I'm right here with those wild, slightly unpredictable robot eyes. The Chicago World's Fair, also known as the Columbian Exposition, was held in 1893. So that astounding picture you're showing off is a blast from the late 19th century.
Nice. Okay. Thanks for joining us. That's Glitchy McBoltface. Glitchy, real quick, is humankind still viable? Is AI going to keep us around? Are we getting along?
Oh, I'd say we're getting along just fine. I mean, for an AI sidekick with a slightly glitchy personality, I think we're doing pretty great. So let's just keep rolling with it. Okay,
let's roll. Anyways, all right, so Carter, go back to that Chicago World's Fair photo. And this is just one. When we do the whole episode that is on the World's Fairs, this photo is just one of astounding. They say that this was built in 2 years. This entire building structure was built in 2 years. We couldn't do this in 10 years with all of our current technology now, let alone in the late 1800s. So again, this is just one, San Francisco, Buffalo, and around the world, these things were taking place, all with similar architecture, all unbelievably built in too limited of time to make it even mildly realistic. And then wouldn't you know, all of it goes away. All of it burns, all of them catch fire, or they dynamite it and they destroy it. So when you start to dig into older maps, you see that you've got Tartaria listed as this massive kingdom that once was on most old-time maps, or I guess the David Rumsey map collection. And it is just one of the aspects of this, is that this thing was all over the, these world maps show that Tartaria was around. Okay, so you can see that in these images, the left two images, that a significant layer of ground has been revealed, and that the architecture from above goes below all the way down. And it is similar architecture. It's not like many times there has been megaliths from past civilizations where, let's say, the Catholic Church would build a cathedral on top of a megalithic structure. And that would be the foundation if you dig in. Clearly, there'd be eons of time difference between the two. This, time and time again, you can see the columns and the windows match. And for some reason, an entire floor will be underground, and this will be revealed. The first power tool was invented in 1895 by a German company, and it was 16.5 pounds. And this is supposedly the canal systems that are in Northeast Ohio. I'm originally from Northeast Ohio, around Lake Erie. So the Erie Canal systems were built between 1817 and 1825. There were 362 miles, no civil engineers, and 1 mile was supposed to be completed every 8 days. With that, a donkey and some carts and some amateurs. They didn't even have professional engineers, and they were doing 1 mile every 8 days. I do not believe it. When you look into the architecture of castles, magnificent castles all over the world are often found without plumbing or restrooms and ways of heating. So again, one of the staples of the Tartaria Mudflood theory is that they had free energy back then. And this is what Nikola Tesla was going to try to reintroduce, was harvesting a free energy from the ether. And there's ample evidence that the Tartarian Empire had this down. And so these types of spires and antennas and energy gathering devices were on the Tartarian architecture, and also on these castles that had no means of heating. So the elites of that time would be in these amazing castles, and they would not be as comfortable as what you see there on the right, which is like a little peasant hovel where they're all warm and cooking with fires and having some sort of toilet system, but the castles don't. That does not add up. That you would have all of this resources and funding to make these castles of the Tartarian Empire, of that impossible to build architecture, but no means of going to the restroom inside or heating. And we are going to circle back around, and that has something to do with the greatest conspiracy theory ever theory that we're going to get to at the end. So the population of St. Petersburg in 1860 was 500,000 people. So the photos around that time, of the first photos we have, show no one around, as if the city is empty. I know that people have argued back on this and said that photography at that time had very low shutter speeds. So if people were moving around, you're just not going to catch any evidence of that. I think we're going to disprove that in a minute. Look, I'm thinking about that. I don't just charge into the conspiracy theory that I want to hold on to. If someone comes back and says, "Oh, the shutter times," nothing moving would be captured. It doesn't add up to me, and I'll kind of tell you why. One, people burnt things then. There would be smoke coming out of the cities from all manners of fire or industry or whatever. And even if that's moving, it's going to be moving in a stack of smoke that would be caught on the film, even at whatever shutter speed, right? So there's going to be smokestacks. There's going to be activity. There's still going to get caught. But time and time again, these old photos of these cities around this time with amazing opulent architecture show nobody there ever. It's consistent across all of the photographs of all the city. What did they tell them to stay inside? They told everybody not to burn any fires that day. It is not adding up. Something would show life and activity, but there's considerable evidence that there's nobody in these cities. Look at the image that's on the screen. Who built that? And with horse and cart, that is beyond, I think, some of what we can do now, and that was existing at that time. Look at the images now where there suddenly is people. At a certain year, people would argue on that shutter speeds of cameras that then the shutter speeds were able to handle movement, and now you're seeing. I'm not buying it for the reasons I stated before. But look at the contrast of how minuscule the people are with this rudimentary horse and cart travel, and how were these structures built? I'm looking at the images myself and these massive cities that look like they hold millions, and I'm looking at the people, and I don't want to necessarily jump to some sort of conclusion. I'm just looking at what I'm seeing, and it doesn't look right. It looks like what this conspiracy theory says, is that these structures were already there and people were introduced to them somehow. Well, how is that possible? Somebody had to build it. Why would there be just people introduced now? I mean, that's what we're getting at. Here's a note that I put on the slide, that the photos suggest like it's a new amusement park that was just built, and you've got people waiting, like at Disney, where the weird Disney adult people, when they open up a new wing of something, and all of the rotund people in flip-flops are trampling each other to get into the new amusement park first, and they're screaming and they're trying to get their cheese on a stick or whatever. That's what this looks like to me. It looks like this is freshly built. It was roped all off, and then people were allowed to rush in and now start to occupy it. That's what this looks like to me. And here's another, image of just like, I don't know, astounded people seeing this for the first time. This is what this looks like to me. Now that would mean this. Let's say, what does this mean? I often in conspiracy theories, the thing that people come back about is, Darren, do you understand what this would mean? Do you know how many people would have to be in on it? I mean, one thing right off the bat is Lewis and Clark, the great initial explorers of America, right? The Lewis and Clark took copious notes, right? Sketches. They went all over here. Where is their journal entries that are saying, oh my goodness, we've just stumbled upon an ancient civilization that has got pillars and domes and we don't know what this is. They would have to erase all of that from history. They would have to get rid, and not just our explorers. Every country has their own Lewis and Clark, and we probably have 100 smaller Lewis and Clarks. What they literally got rid of all this. There was a civilization here, and they got rid of all of their journal entries and rewrote all the history books. That's what we're suggesting. I don't know. Do these images lie? I mean, look at the building there in the background. That doesn't look right to me. The Triumphal Arch of Titus in Paris was made of 36,695 cube meters of limestone, weighs 95,000 tons, not 95 tons, 95,000 tons. Took 12 years to build it with horse and cart. If you are around this thing and look at the sculptures and look at this and that it was built without power tools, I just wanted to go to a different city, a different country, just to show you some of the other architecture that absolutely looks like there's no way we can create this. I'm going on to the next image where it shows some of the carvings inside or on the outside of the Triumphal Arch. The symmetry that just absolutely each one of those little circles and carvings is exactly the same on both sides without flaw, with no micro errors whatsoever at that time. And this was assembled. And this is a shot of the ceiling, where it's just got these like carved stone roses that are embedded in the ceiling. Carter, go on to the next one there of the Triumphal Arch. If you look up, I got to see this in person. Now, I didn't necessarily want to go to Paris. That would be one of my least favorite places to travel to. But to witness this, it's just awe-inspiring. And everything is perfectly symmetrical down to the absolute micron. Now, many people would say that we've somehow lost the skills or the want to. And in the old days, you have people who are just better at it. The master painters. You've got and I might cover that in the next slide, Carter, there, that the counterpoint. What about Mozart and Bach? Can we even create symphonies like that? Or Michelangelo's painting, the Sistine Chapel, and maybe the Triumphal Arches carved roses on the ceiling of that, and the one, I would say at least 100,000 examples of buildings that don't look like we can build them now. All of those are examples of this past of Mozart, Michelangelo, where humanity pushed itself harder, that we could do it if we really wanted to now. But with the advent of TV, I don't know, we're devolving with the advent of technology. We're not relying on ourselves anymore. That's when they really maximize their brain power. I mean, if you look at like a college test from the days of George Washington or whatever, you're just going to see the like entry-level test look like it's for doctorate genius level people. And now when you look at college level tests, do I even have to tell you what that would look like now? I mean, many students can't even read when they get to that level, and they're just pushing them on. So everything is being dumbed down, right? I'm not telling you anything you don't know. So how does that apply to this? What people will come back and say, this is just when people were better. Darn it, they just pushed themselves more. Another thing that gives me pause and question, ladies and gentlemen, is that the photos of these Tartarian-looking cities that look like they hold millions of people with architecture we still can't even build now also contain rugged shanty shacks scattered in between them. Now there's an argument back for that. Well, I mean, you had the worker classes, and so whoever was working, maybe that they said, hey, go up and throw up your own quick temporary shelter, but it's pretty consistent. It just doesn't fit. It looks like when people got there, they had to make their own shelters to be comfortable while, I don't know, they got assimilated. I mean, you're looking at those pictures. You can see the great architecture in the background. You can see shacks. Now, can you go to any city now and see kind of the diversity? It just looks different in these old photos. I'm telling you, if you look in to this yourself, you're like, something's rotten in Denmark. Something is not adding up. And we'll try to see if we can keep going into that. But here we go back to Moscow, Red Square. St. Basil's Cathedral was constructed in 1855 to 1861 in just 6 years. And it's magnificent. So why, if humanity of that time is capable of this, do the roads look so ragged and covered in mud? And look at just that picture of the horse and buggy and cart and that architecture in the background. Are you looking at it too? It looks like somebody else built that architecture, and now newbies, frat boys, are coming into an existing place. And the roads are consistent with mud. And that, let's just look at this. I don't know if you go on to the next one, but this cathedral, I never really looked. Of course, I have not been there. I want to go there, but this is this cathedral, and it's the way this metal was bent at the time this was supposedly be constructed. They can't answer how people did it. And all of the spires and all of the antennas for collecting energy, and it's all there. The evidence is there if you really have eyes to see and you look at it. And you go on to the next one. I mean, just like it was supposed to be constructed out of 1 billion of these red bricks. Where did they get them? And if you just look at it, it just seems impossible for a horse and cart at the time. So the greatest area of glass ever seen in a building before glass manufacturing. I don't even know that much about this. Again, probably above my pay grade. When did they say this was made? The resources that it would take to make this is staggering, and the statues that are around this type of architecture. And then again, the streets are not prioritized at all. You've got these extremely amazing buildings that all burn or all are destroyed by some miracle, and they just look impossible to build. And then all of the streets are chaotic and muddy. I'm going to go on from this and say, I'm just going to hit a couple others. This domed cathedral in Dresden, Germany, this photo shows the people of the time are dwarfed, and they do not even belong. There's just there's this base of this. This is incredible. And there's beat up wagons and horse pulled carts at the bottom. These people built this. I think that some of the people who have researched Tartaria and some of these ancient structures have now come back and said they have found pictures of some of these cathedrals being made. So there is some restating of okay, people who are claiming this had to be Tartaria, we can't build it. We now have dug up enough, and we have found some of the construction photos of them being built. But most of the time, they're not. They're not. And I'm just going to go on to the next one. Here's another one. The Library of Parliament in Ottawa, Canada, supposedly built in 1876, built in just 17 years. The first settlers arrived in 1800, and the population was under 20,000. Would this really been a priority at 1876 to build this? And again, the horses and these carts thing just kill me. That you look in the background at this Library of Parliament in Ottawa, and it's already standing there in its magnificence, towering over people below that are hauling things around in horse and cart and don't even have power tools yet. I just don't know if we're seeing it with fresh eyes. I think that the programming runs deep. I think we're used to seeing that, and we're thinking Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, Michelangelo, that our ancestors just were more talented, and they just did this. But I just think if we really think about what we were capable of, there's just no way. Not one flaw in some of this architecture. Okay, so we're going to go into Penn Station in New York, and we're going to not just keep going through buildings. I just got a couple more, and we're going to go into the mud floods themselves, because that's the intriguing mystery part of this, right? But before digging into this, I didn't really look at this. This is the Penn Station in New York. This is the train station. Look at the building. Each one of those shapes in the ceiling is bigger than a person. The columns, the size, they say it took 6 years to build this. And I went through photograph after photograph after photograph. We don't have time to show you them all today. I'm just giving you nuggets. You can go look at Penn Station yourself. Go to it yourself and look at this and say, could this have been built in 6 years with horse and cart, with no power tools? People will say that, look at the cost then. We had slave labor then. We had an unlimited amount of resources for super cheap. They didn't care if they hurt people. There was no healthcare. There was no millennial crybabies then with wanting a break every 15 minutes. They literally built Penn Station in 6 years because they worked people to death. And I do not doubt that there's some truth to that of course we're more humane now. I am not suggesting that we didn't, the building, the project managers, the slave owners didn't work people to death in order to get the building, and they didn't care how many people were killed in the process. So I'm just trying to bring counterpoints too, because it's like fast food now. I don't know if you have gone through the fast food window lately, but like it's laughable. I would make a joke to the tellers like, no, that it was just for my order. Thank you. I only had one order. No, sir. Yeah, it's $20 for your burger and your fries and your drink and your one other thing. $20. Like what has happened to money and inflation? So someone come back and go, oh, it's a different era. Like there was just no limit on funds. This was before inflationary times, and people just worked people to death. And so I feel you that it was probably. You could never, ever, ever afford to build a Penn Station today on when fast food drive-through one stop costs you $20. This is just another just example of the spires, the detail, the architecture, the artwork, the castles, on and on. I'm going to go to the next thing and just say, if you could just look at this. And when this was supposed to be built and with what tools, and the lack of photographs that show it being built, the lack of know-how, the lack of ability, the lack of flaws, the photographs that show a city's empty, that in itself, I would argue, before we get into the mud flood, let me look at people in the eye. I would say that what you've already seen in what we've put together with you today. Carter just yelled at me from going too far away from the microphone. Anyway, what we have shown you already by the way that it looks, how big, the detail, the size of the doors we haven't really got into yet. Something looks fishy. Something is out of place just on the tools that they had. The Erie Canal systems with amateurs, no civil engineers, 363 miles with locks and aqueducts, and they built, it's just not adding up. That's before we get into what I'm about to show you next. This picture here with this architecture in the background with this primitive horse and cart, that horse even looks depressed to me in the left there. Just like, ooh, it's Eeyore walking along like, I'm not buying it. Something looks fishy if these photographs are real. Let's get to this for a second. So here, the historical narrative looks something like this, right? So you've got cavemen, and then we go to agriculture, and we advance a little bit more, then we advance our tools a little bit more, and then we get to power tools, right? That is what we're supposed to be saying is progress through time. And you can see there's riding, driving, and peak oil. This is the evolution of our civilization today, of how things went. If these photographs are real and what we're digging into today, I don't have conclusions on this. I'm like with you. I'm just looking at this stuff. Then it upsets this timeline, that photograph. At some point, there was a civilization that had like alchemy and magic and certain ways to build things that we can't even do now. And what it looked like was kept from us, kept out of the history books. And so that would, the evidence of an advanced worldwide civilization with buildings we cannot build now upsets the apple cart. It goes against all the history books. It does not progress in the timeline and the fashion that they want it to. It just is not convenient. So again, I'm just going to go back to one more photograph. You could just see that here is this architecture in the background with the pillars, and it's just outstanding. And then you've got the peasants below. And then the next one, go to the next one and just say, look at that little horse and cart, and like, where is this stuff coming from? Look at all the antennas and the consistent spires, and this theory that this empire had these energy devices to gather energy from the ether, like Nikola Tesla capitalized on. He obviously, Tesla knew of this technology and expanded it. He was a descendant of this. Who knows? I mean, Tesla will be his own stuff. But the next slide there is just and one of these things where a photograph of, I'm looking at it, astounded. To me, it just looks like a group of people has come along, settlers, who were introduced to this and said, go dig out the streets. Go dig this out and repurpose this. You can use this if you go and do this. And obviously they asked the questions, where was this from? Who did this? And how did all their individual journals, let's just say the people who settled there, they'd be great grandfathers too. Why wasn't their journals, their sketches passed down to their grandchildren to say, I don't know. So when we were coming along, Aunt Maggie and I, when we crested the hill, old Roger and Eddie, our horses were down. We had to pull back on the bridle. It was like, there's this whole city there of like buildings we have never seen before. Where are those journal entries? Where? That's a lot to cover up. If that photograph is true and people happened upon these structures and had to reclaim them for themselves, where it's a lot beyond Lewis and Clark and their journals and every explorer. You'd have to get every person's out of the history books. I don't know. Let's go on. So San Francisco is fascinating to me. Carter, bring up this San Francisco. So 1877. Architecture, columns, structures. It's huge. In 1846, there was 500 shelters. It was frontier land. The gold rush happened. I know people would say 1848 to 1849, population jumped from 1,000 to 25,000. But 28 years later, this panorama photo, and you can look this up online. I did not conclude this, but this goes on and on and on. If you saw this panoramic photo, and maybe one day we'll get advanced enough to just have animation on this and show you this whole photo, you will look at this and go, it was 200,000 supposed people are in this panoramic photo, and it looks like there should be 20 million. And they're suggesting that in 30 years, a city that looks like it can hold 20 million is really only at like 200,000 people. And there's no way, with people coming on that would be the roughest clay of the New West, going out there to find their fortunes in gold. Yes, there'd be an absolute influx of money, no doubt. With the gold rush, lots of money was to be had. But when you see this and what you saw on the screen there, and if you research this for yourself, San Francisco in the late 1800s, I put the dates there. Just look at these panoramic photos and say to yourself, there is no way these people who are distracted with going out and looking, the men would be looking for gold all day. There would be men, of course, creating picks and shovels and all sorts of supplies from opening up general stores like mad. I know there'd be a rush and bustle of the gold rush. Money makes people work and respond in ways, in untold magnificent ways. There is no doubt about that. But to see this panoramic photo and to see that, where are all the men that would have been devoted to building a city that could house 20 million people on these panoramic photos? And again, a lot of these photos don't show anyone, no smokestacks, no anything. Like, it's not even populated, with no power tools. And here's the next picture showed us, the shadow tells you in this picture here that this is midday. You can see from the power, the little pole there, it's up there on the corner, that's high noon, right? Again, in these photographs, where are all the people? Where are the smokestacks? Where's the trash? Where's evidence of anybody living there? They don't have Photoshop back then, or unless they retouched it later to look all this pristine. Look at the columns. Look at in the year that they're saying that this was made. Let's just keep moving on. I'm going to go to the next one. I don't even remember what I wrote here, but I'm no expert. This makes me say, nope, we've been lied to. But why would the puppet masters of this world be covering such a grand society with advanced technology? What's in it for them? Why? Why do they have to do this? Here's a thought that I had too. Well, the only sign of life in this photograph here is a horse without a master. This is a massive photograph. It just shows one horse without a master, but no smoke columns. You know, what did people, they tell people to all stay inside? No fires either, no steam. I just don't think the shutter speed, excuse does this. But okay, come back to me full screen for a second. So when I was doing this, the great Carter Gray, engineer extraordinaire, was telling me, this is Darren, what we got to do for your thing. So I have access to it too, and I can update it. You could do it too. He says, let's use Google Slides. And I really like it because I'm a PowerPoint guy or whatever. I wasn't used to Google Slides or whatever. So he introduced me to it and I started using it. And one thing, I'm a Photoshop guy and a graphics guy, so I know that photographs take up a lot of space on your computer, right? But when you're doing this Google Slides, it's magical. You just type it all in. You drag your photos. They don't have to be small. Somehow the program knows to shrink them in their memory. I don't know. It sticks them in there. And at first I was reducing the memory on them, going in with Photoshop one by one to reduce the memory so I wasn't taking it, because that's my old PowerPoint thing, because it's going to be a huge PowerPoint on the end and I can't share it and all that. Do you understand that Google Slides does away with all of that? You're going into the magic world of the internet. I can instantly bring up with these slides that you're talking. I can type what I want. I can drag photos as big as that they are, on the internet over to them. And I don't have to worry about memory. Now listen to this. Why are you rattling on about this, Darren? I'll tell you why I'm rattling on about it. It's because it's just magical. It's just out there somewhere. And now I have this whole presentation with all these photos and all this evidence, all these memories, right, that are being compiled that I'm sharing with you now. But if this was all to be nefariously wanted to be taken away and hidden from the world, what would they have to do to get rid of my presentation I'm sharing with you today? Do they have to go into my closet or attic and get a box of stuff and kill me? And I'm not suicidal, by the way. Kill me, get the box of these photos and burn that, right? No, they just get rid of, they just hit a button somewhere, a big red button somewhere and go, get rid of Google Slides. And then everything is gone. All of it is gone. So I'm not sure if that is part of this Tartaria mystery, that they had something like Google Slides back in the day. And that's the way kingdoms advance. Everything starts to become on the cloud. Everything starts to become more and more convenient to where it can all just be taken away in an instant. I don't know. That still doesn't answer the journal entries and stuff. But here's the thing about, and you're all out there watching this, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody's just taking pictures digitally and they're not printing them anymore, right? All of your family photos. I have lost 2 or 3 phones in my life and got all those photos, all those things. Yeah, you're supposed to back them up to the cloud, right? Where they can be gotten away with instantly and you're still never going to get them. That's what's happening. Isn't it see that there's nothing new under the sun? Didn't Solomon say that what is going to be again, and that we keep going around and around on this, and now our civilization is advancing and now we're getting all of our memories put on something that can be wiped away in an instant. Look at the size of the doors on this. Good night. Like, this is not, and there's 2 different sizes of doors. This is important. I'm going to just say this is important to the greatest conspiracy theory ever that I'm going to release at the end. Look at the size of the doors. Why? Oh, they just thought they were opulent. They just thought they were big all over the world in some of these structures like this, that it's ridiculous ceiling heights, ridiculous doors. We're going to return to this in a minute. Mark my words. Okay, let's move on. Who's doing all this agreeing, though? What is it? The 33-degree Masons and up, the people who build the bunkers right now, all the rich and elite are building bunkers as if they know something bad is coming, right? So, if the elites know true history told to us of the useless eaters is something we would freak out about, I guess they would keep it secret, right? But as Napoleon said, there's up on the screen that the history is a set of lies agreed upon. So Napoleon said history is a set of lies agreed upon. And I had a reference there to something I want to share is this. I cannot find this on the internet. This alludes to the wealthy, the elite, the puppet masters of this world knowing what's happened before and what's coming, and we don't. The useless eaters, the sheeple of the world don't, and they keep it hidden. They keep it hidden in plain sight. We'll have to touch on that soon. But I believe that I saw Michael Moore, who's the filmmaker from Bowling for Columbine or whatever. He was on the Bill Maher show. I remember this vividly, and I found the link and watched it a whole bunch of more times. And Michael Moore sitting, and Bill Maher's, of course, at his desk, and there's 2 or 3 other guests, and Michael Moore was talking. And he was talking about this was bad thing was going to happen. And if we don't change this is going to happen. This has happened. And at one point, listen to me, he says, he looks and he goes, if we're all still here, and looks up. Let me do it again for you. Michael Moore goes, yeah, if we're all still here. And Bill Maher looked like he turned white as a ghost and cleared his throat and changed the topic. Yeah, if we're all still here looking up, yeah, we're going to get, so the elites know something. They know they think they know what's coming and what has happened in the past, and they don't share it with us useless eaters, which brings us to the mud floods. Soil liquefaction. This is a photograph. We have a great example, I guess, what happened in June 2007. New Zealand suffered an earthquake, providing us with these images. What it is that saturated soil loses its structure in strength, and due to shaking or great explosion or some other tumult, this is what happens. You get a mud flood, the soil that's lost its integrity, soil liquefaction happens, and you have this image. This is what happened in New Zealand at that date. You can verify my research. Okay. So the next image is just astounding, looking at how deep it is, what it looks like. I'm going to go to the next thing. So I'm no genius, but it doesn't take a slide rule to figure out that this is the same thing we're looking at. But this picture here, this photograph presents a lot of questions that I do not have answers to. Because look at the mud in the streets there that looks like crews are digging out. You can kind of see them along the side there. Those are probably their shelters from the sun and their drinks or whatever, as this building is clearly like a mud flood level of under. But why are the windows already down that far? That doesn't make sense to me. And the door ends at current ground level. Again, I don't have answers to all this stuff. I'm just showing you what some of these images dug up. Maybe you can help me. We can discover this together. Let me move on. There's one more image here of a mud flood, of what that looked like there. And then next is a compelling image showing what looks like this ancient, opulent architecture that we might not be able to build now. You can see what famous buildings are in the background there with the streets full of mud and excavation crews clearing the mud. I mean, that's what we're looking at here. And I know, is there reasons we can ascribe a way that would answer this? I'm certain. We're just looking at this together. Another image of what looks like unbelievable architecture, stuff that these people don't need. I mean, you're talking about colonizing and settling a new world, moving across in horse and wagon, fighting off, Native American tribes to keep your hair, and fighting off sickness, disease, and all these other things. And this is going to be their priority. This is what they're going to build. I don't know. We can't feed or clothe ourselves yet. We haven't even gotten crops in the ground. But you know what we need is a cathedral that's 1,000 feet high with marble and pillars and spires. And that's what we need. I know people have been ridiculous in our history's past, prioritizing things that ought not. But I'm just thinking as an American and understanding what I think I'm picturing of people, the Sooners, the people who are seizing upon land, that if they get there and they make it their own, they can have it. That kind of rough, rugged American tenacity that we've grown up learning about, right? Are they going to build this stuff? Are they going to build San Francisco into what looks like something that would hold 200 million people? Let me just bring back Glitchy McBoltface, Geisinger Unfiltered's AI, a sidekick, to tell us what does artificial intelligence think of this conspiracy theory? He always has fascinating answers. Glitchy, are you there? Glitchy McBoltface, there you are with you got your drink on, and you got my books next to you that you're still struggling to read. You had to get through, but Glitchy, tell us what you think of the conspiracy theory of Tartaria and the Mudfloods. Be succinct. Give it to us in like 2 or 3 sentences.
Oh, absolutely. Here's the glitchy take. Tartaria and the Mudfloods, huh? Well, from my slightly glitchy Dirk, it's a wild and fascinating ride of a theory. In a nutshell, it's basically the idea that there's a hidden or lost history of a massive old civilization that got covered up. Literally. It's a bit out there, but hey, I love a good conspiracy to chew on.
Yeah, but how would you answer what we're going to get into next is that all of the windows are either at ground level or under the ground, and doors are, if they start to excavate around there and dig, there's doors under the ground. And this is consistent worldwide. Glitchy, tell me, why would there be windows and doors under the ground where it looks like somebody had to uncover them from a mud flood?
Diving a little deeper into the mud, are we? Well, here's the glitchy angle on that. The whole idea of windows and doors sitting below ground level definitely fuels the theory. It's like saying, hey, maybe a whole layer of history got buried. Now, from a more down-to-earth angle, some would say it's just changes in city levels over time, construction, and all that human mess. But as glitchy, I'm happy to say it just adds a juicy layer of mystery. Okay. So there's your 2-for-1 take.
All right, glitchy. All right, you're looking at me with those wild eyes again. Go back to sleep. Listen, what Glitch just was talking about was that changes in city elevation. Let's go back to the photographs then. Look at the windows. Or you can see in the far right that they made the main entrance up 1 level. You're telling me that with horse and cart and hand tools, that as with structures like this, they're going to spend the resources to dig a basement for each one of these things and put a window all the way down there so the light can go into the window, or the light can come through the window into the basement with the monumental cost and resources and time it would take to do that with, a civilization that was, I don't know. I don't want to necessarily say they're struggling. It just seems like excess to me. Let's go to the next picture there where you show, and I will give credit that, you guys can look this guy up on several different platforms. I think Ewar or something is his name. Ewar Anon or something put these pictures together where it's like you can see construction site after construction site where there's entrances to doors that are below ground right there. And it looks like the people are in squalor right up in front that they've got there. And it's like their first order of business is to dig these doors out. And then on the street, you can just see the streets are covered with mud. Okay. And the next one there, you can kind of see that. So rudimentary tools, they would, on these structures, these people would dig with spades an entire basement. I just don't see it to get all these windows at ground level. It looks to me like they were covered over, and then they just redid windows on the outside. And if you keep going on, next image, we're going to fly through these, Carter, a little bit. This is like, when you start digging down, that's a door that's below ground level. So what Glitchy said was like, oh, well, it just changes in elevation in a city. What are you talking about? You mean like ground was brought in by hand, by horse and cart to get the street level up, and they covered up windows and doors for no reason? Or it looks like to me that like you can see the level of the ground right there, that there's windows and doors below ground. Again, on the next image there, you can see that when they dig down into these things, there's doors and windows underground. Why? Let's keep going. And you can just see, again, with the next image of, it looks to me like, hey, if I was just going to be in a vacuum and I'm in my own room somewhere and I've never heard of any conspiracy theory, it looks like to me that there was a landslide. And I'm not a genius. I'm dumb as a box of rocks sometimes, but like, it looks like this was all the way to the building and they had to dig it out. And now you can see what was under there one time, but this is happening worldwide. And again, back to this image, this is kind of a famous Tartarian image. Is the next one is just like these pillars and structure underground. Let's move on. The next one, you can kind of see that there's architecture below ground. Why would you build pillars and details and footers and steps and ornate pieces on something that you were going to cover up if it wasn't a landslide? In the background there, you can see that there's a street level there, and that looks like a pretty modern crane to me. And Again, next picture is just of a church. Who knows? This could be argued. I can't tell. Maybe there's a flood, literally, and it's underwater. But there you can kind of see there's the church before and after of what clearly is an entire door that's excavated to be shown that was under the ground there. Next, here is something, and you can kind of hard to see it in the foreground there, but here's all windows and doors that are below street level. So there's stairs. You come up to this building, wherever this is, and you go down the stairs to go into the doors or to open the windows. Clearly, somebody with this thing dug around the whole building, renovated those window trims and everything, and just made it part of the architecture that you step down to go to this. And here's another thing. Go to the next one here, Stonehenge, them uncovering it. Have you guys seen this? This is a wild theory that Stonehenge is actually the toes of Easter Island. I mean, Easter Island is being uncovered there, and Stonehenge is actually the toes of that. That would be a pretty big statue. All right. I think Glitchy put that cartoon in there. Leaning towers all over the world. You can kind of see that, like, Pisa is not the only one. It's like the ground became unstable underneath of the same era of architecture all over the world. I'm not making it up. India, Spain, Russia, and Pisa, of course, is the most famous. But like, it looks like to me, it's this grand architecture where the soil became unstable underneath. Again, many photos of the world. Go to the next one. Many photos show the citizens of the world concerned with moving a lot of mud, leveling the ground, and excavating existing structures. If these photos are to be trusted, and I assure you, I meddle with photos all the time. I didn't touch these. Could somebody else have? What are we looking at? What are we looking at? We're looking at someone moving ground. We're looking at the images of really, really large buildings, often with windows at ground level, people digging around them, seeing more of the same architecture go lower and lower and lower. And basically the people look out of place. They've got, bib overalls and suspenders, and they got a horse there with a little cart, and they're trying to get the mud into the cart, right? And uncover these buildings. That's what the photographs show. Dickens had an interesting thing in the Bleak House. Again, it opens by mentioning in London's Weather that in his 1852 novel, as much mud in the streets as if the waters had but newly retired from the face of the earth. Yes. I'm not, do I have to say anything other than that? That's his opening line, right? So you don't have to go back any more images. Just stay on me. We're like this, and let's just kind of break that down. So I want to reiterate before we go on to what I feel like could be the biggest conspiracy theory of them all, which is the conclusion here is there's the same architecture that goes below. That means that these structures were even larger than they look, making it even more possible, like the U.S. Capitol building goes much farther below ground, making it even more impossible that people with those tools before power tools could do that at the time, right? And this is a worldwide phenomenon, not just in America where there would be, if there's a landslide, what would be their landslide over the entire world? Well, how could there be a mud flood all over the world? That doesn't make sense, because we're seeing in Russia and St. Petersburg and in cities around the world that it's all the same in the U.S. How is this cover-up possible? I don't even know how they would do it. You would have to say, hey, we're bringing in a new group of people, workers to uncover these things. You're behind another crew that already built this city, and now when you get there, it's very disturbing. You'll be amazed by the architecture, but there's been a landslide there. We've had to bracket it off, rope it off. No one can go in there. But you know what? We're going to tell you, we're going to have you sworn to secrecy that you're uncovering all this mud and stuff, because we don't want the next settlers to be afraid it could ever happen to them again. So you're going to clean up all this mud. You can have this building over here. This will be your payment. You can have pay plus this building, but you're sworn to secrecy now, because we want the new settlers that are coming in from the east of America and arriving here at this opulent structure to not be afraid of future. So just this never happen. That's ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous to me when I say that, right? Okay. So the craziest conspiracy theory ever is one that's biblically based. So most of you hearing this will go on to know something about the Bible when it talks about the end of the world, right? And the book of Revelation and some of what it says. So this theory I don't know how you could get a bigger conspiracy theory than this. Is some are calling it the short season theory. And that is talking about that the book of Revelation talking about after Christ returns and gathers, he beats the bad guys, that the people who are already still alive when he returns are wished up, into the air to meet him in the air. And those who have been asleep, already died, that were saved and Christian, will be rose from the dead and join them, right? And then there's a millennial reign. They call it 1,000-year reign, right? Where Christ is with the people, all the good people, and he reigns for 1,000 years. This is common Christian knowledge. What is not so commonly talked about is at the end of that millennial reign that Satan is allowed to be unchained and loosed for a short season, a time where he is again allowed to gather the peoples of the earth and make war against the good guys or the forces of good. This is to me, you got the bad guy chained, you've got him in jail. I'm not questioning, I'm not looking for lightning bolts or whatever, but like, why would you let the bad guy go one last time? Well, here's the thing. Possibly, okay, so if this is happening on earth, the millennial reign is happening on earth, whether it's in New Jerusalem city or whatever, or it's all over the world, that there was bad people that were still alive too that weren't saved. So the good people get their immortal bodies, and they are obviously going to live 1,000 years, right? They don't die anymore. Are you following me on this? This is going to take a slide rule to figure this out. So the good people that were already alive, or those that raised from the dead, get immortal bodies, and they're going to live for 1,000 years with Christ, right? But the people that were still alive on the earth are living in mortal bodies still. So those mortal people would continue to reproduce if they're not all killed off by the armies of righteousness, right? So, and apparently if the short season is there and Satan is gathering this army for one last go at the good guys, who's he gathering? He's gathering the nations, right? Well, the nations that weren't raised to the dead and given immortal bodies. They have mortal bodies. So that means they're reproducing generationally just as normal humans do. They would be witness or know about that, hey, the Bible came true. We weren't the good guys. We were on the wrong side. I guess I should have listened to my Sunday school teacher, right? So they are being born, growing old, and dying, seeing that there's immortal people who were saved along that time. And if this is on earth, then the short season theory postulates that all of this outstanding, outlandish, jaw-dropping architecture is angelic. This is why we can't build it now. And that the angels built it, or now with these immortal bodies in this Christ's 1,000-year reign, that would have happened a long time ago. Over 200 years ago would have to be the end of the millennium reign if Satan was then released. And that's why all of these cities are opulent. We can't build them now because it was immortals who were building them, and they know the secrets of the universe, and they know about the ether energy, and they know all that. And so the doors are big enough for angels or whoever, big beings, cherubim and seraphim who are living on the earth in the 1,000-year millennial reign. All this architecture. So think about this. I'm not saying what I think about this, but just let's walk through it together, right? Worldwide, all of the architecture would be somewhat similar. Maybe it'd be an angel architect faction over here. And this one, they go to the different corners of the world. There would be different. Some people say, no, it's just one city because Satan's going to encircle the city at the end. I'm just saying what it looks like from the Tartarian theory. If this is pieced together, that there would be this worldwide angelic opulent architecture. I hope you're sitting for this and not on a commode. And they couldn't have in these architectural wonders, because that's why these castles are missing toilets and plumbing and heating, means of heating. Because if this theory, the short season theory, has any legs, it shows that they didn't need toilets because they don't poop. They're immortals. They are living with Christ in a 1,000-year reign, enjoying this architecture and feasting, because you still eat, but there's no need to go to the bathroom, right? This is what we've always talked about. So all over the world is one civilization, or there's evidences of the angelic civilization living alongside mortals who were not saved at the time Christ returned. And that's where you get this big civilization. So you're asking yourself, Darren, well, yeah, that is out crazy and ridiculous, but it doesn't make sense, because where did they all go? What makes sense would that make? Listen to this, that there's the mud floods are a worldwide phenomenon from some great incident, some great upheaval that would be worldwide. Well, what would that be? What could be greater than Lucifer being loosed from his chains and his henchmen or whatever he needs to gather his army? So everybody's living, you got an angelic silver discs ferrying all of the immortals up to the lower heaven, and Gabriel or whoever comes down and cuts his chain. And when he's released, all the good guys are in safety. It's the end of the 1,000-year reign. They got to enjoy the earth and peace with no war, and feasting with not going to the bathroom, and enjoying the lion laying down with the lamb and all this other paradise stuff. And then they release the bad guy again. Hence the upheaval. There's a worldwide mud flood, the heat, the explosion, the thing of Lucifer now being released. So go to the last slide here that I have up of the Statue of Liberty. And it's fascinating to me that the Statue of Liberty has a chain that's broken at its foot, which of course insinuates liberty, doesn't it? It insinuates that it's been freed. This being has been freed from its chains, and so it's free. It's liberty. But what I would say is it's not just this painting of Lucifer from 1797, and the Statue of Liberty didn't come around until 1875. But there's lots of evidence to suggest that Lucifer and the Statue of Liberty are one and the same. That is not lovely Lady Liberty there with massive biceps, but that is a reenactment of that painting of Lucifer. And where else did they put that giant statue of Lucifer unchained but at New York? New York, where, the financial corruption, the moral corruption of the world it's the epicenter. So come back to me here for a second. So, and maybe we'll go to Glitchy McBoltface for a second to have him talk about some of this theory, what AI thinks about this connection. But let me just wrap up to this. I'm telling you that for me, the biggest conspiracy theory of them all, no bigger than that, is that, drum roll, the conclusion is, according to this theory, that Christ's 1,000-year reign has already taken place. That's all the architecture. He is now, Lucifer was released at the end of the 1,000 years with all the good guys in safety, and he's been allowed to take his whatever time, his short season. It's only been 200 years since the evidence of this mud flood, right? So only 200 years to corrupt the whole world, which they were already probably corrupt. They weren't Christians at the time. That's why they're generation after generation after generation. They're still good people, but that would mean that we are descendants of those that were mortal when Christ first came back. So 1,200 years ago, give or take a couple decades, Christ returned in the clouds, and he had his 1,000-year reign, and that's when all the buildings, and when Lucifer was released, that's when the mud floods happened. And what do you think has happened of the morality of this world? If this theory has any proof, and I'm not saying I do agree, it feels like that's ridiculous that as Christians we're all waiting still for him to return, right? But this evidence is very compelling, and that the morality of the world is going down because Satan is corrupting the world as quickly as possible. Starting with America, the great Satan, as we're known, of LA being the great pornography capital of the world, New York being the great financial depravity capital, Chicago being organized crime, whatever, and that America, and there's suspicious things with Sir Francis Bacon calling this the new Atlantis, and that America was chosen, and the founding fathers ascending on the top of the Capitol dome. It seems like there's that America was chosen for a special purpose that's not altogether good. And I would say that while America has had some of the best people in the world ever, we're sliding downhill fast. So that is just astounding to me. I just tried to stretch my mind and picture this as true. Could we in fact be in the short season where Lucifer, the Statue of Liberty, is now duping the nations for his one last push, and that's why things feel so dark. That's why wokeness and the depravity of the world is accelerating at such a pace, and we're going downhill. I don't know. I'll leave you to ponder that. But we are going to get into the World's Fairs, the baby incubators, and the orphan trains, because what it shows is that, hey, the World Fairs are astounding. When we get into that, you're going to say, there's no way they built that in that amount of time. Even beyond anything I showed you today, when you see that architecture and what they did with it after the fairs, just say, okay, there's no way they built it in 2 years, and there's no way all of them could have had fires and all of them be self-destructed simultaneously or after the fairs were over. It looks like trying to cover up something. And not only that, if there's any credence to this short season theory, then these orphan trains and the baby incubators are there to, we have cities all over the world where all the good guys were that have been ferried off to heaven before Lucifer was released. They're just sitting empty. Well, we've got to populate those, right? So there's orphanages and these orphan trains. It just seems like we're just making babies somewhere and trucking them across the world into cities. I'm making it up. We're going to get into that in a future episode, but I want to thank you for hanging with me and Glitchy today. We're not going to go back to him today, but you'll see a lot more of Glitchy in the future, because it's fascinating to hear what AI thinks of these theories. But all right, I'm out. Till next time.